Okay, so next up we have Dr. Marty Misener, who is a veterinarian and founding partner at Southwest. Marty has a special interest and extensive experience in PRRS management and research, and will be sharing an update on Southwest's ongoing PRRS project. Please help me welcome Marty.
Thank you, Michael. Thank you, Jordan. Everybody can hear me back there okay? Excellent. I want to take just a second and personally thank Robert DeRosier. He's had a very long and illustrious career and been very, very focused on how we problem solve difficult health situations in swine, and made his large brain available to colleagues and producers in various jurisdictions, regardless of where he may work. The other thing I have to point out is, as a tech service veterinarian, he never tried to sell product, just science. And that is a rare entity. So I would say he's one of the smartest guys I know. So thank you very much, Robert. Yeah, thank you so much for coming out. Really, really appreciate that. And for our early little deal on, who is Southwest now, I can't thank you guys enough. You did a bang-up job in presenting who we are without making it sound like a commercial. So thank you. That's awesome. In another area, we're focused on PRRS today because it's still the biggest elephant in the room. I've had the pleasure of slightly over 30 years in practice and got to start when it was mystery swine disease. So this disease and I have grown up together. I think it's smarter than I am. And very, very frustrating disease. Very good for our business and very good for a challenging career. But oh my goodness, it seems like every time you think you maybe got something figured out, you get humbled again. And there's the old adage of you should never stop learning. And there's another one, I'm getting used to being wrong. And kind of cool with it. It's all right. So one of the changes we've had, as you can see, is we've expanded Southwest in many, many different ways. And with that expansion is an opportunity to utilize more resource and really focus it at what can we do, particularly to help our clients with PRRS and very specifically with PRRS outbreak. And we know that this is one of the most trying times for a producer and their animals, and in many cases, they're veterinarian. And so we have put together more of a health team approach, and it's a full court press. So when a farm breaks with PRRS, we have the opportunity to use a much deeper resource of people to dive into that outbreak, to assist with whatever needs to be assisted to ensure that timelines are kept up, and to intervene in a much tidier fashion. Will that absolutely make a difference? I hope so. It's broken down into a few different areas. This presentation was going to be given by Jillian Greaves, and she does a great job, so I'm going to ask for her forgiveness, given that I'm now giving it. She's unavailable to be here today because, unfortunately, she's sick. So it's not that she didn't want to, she just is very under the weather. So it's obviously focused on what do we do with a PRRS outbreak. And now we are trying to actually put it into more of a decision tree and absolutely capture information. And I wish we would have been doing this from the very first days of practice, because we would have a wealth of information and hopefully be a lot smarter than we are now. So it's based on an outbreak survey that's done internally, and this is all internal Southwest practice stuff. It's based on diagnostic information that can be the trigger, and also that we're capturing in a much better format, and we're layering in performance information that's going to hopefully be able to give us a time where we can compare breaks and ideally get, like, the shiny goal is to be able to say, if you have this strain, depop. If you have this strain, oh, just live with it because it's a wimp. If you have this strain, eliminate. And that's an overgeneralization But that is the goal, is to, within our practice and within our demographic, have a much better understanding. So with that survey, we had generated an outbreak report. And then we can set up timelines for whatever intervention has been decided is going to be the best for that farm. We integrate results with outbreak timelines and keep track of time to negative status, and also keep track of time to baseline production. Those two terms have been bantered around the industry for a while now. Daniel Linares out of Minnesota was probably the one who started the first of that work, and that has been continued in numerous publications and looking at numerous different interventions to try and identify what is going to be most effective and what's going to do this in the fastest possible time frame. And with that, we're hoping to increase everyone's knowledge. So, how does this occur? Well, we have the PRRS outbreak. We do the outbreak survey. Andriana, that did our lab stuff, has been instrumental in chasing veterinarians. So thank you, Andriana. And part of the frustration within a vet practice are the damn vets, always. They're hard to count on them to get their information documented and do it in a fashion that's going to be distributed through the whole practice. Oftentimes it still becomes a practice of one, even though you've got 13 active veterinarians in your practice. So this initiative is bringing everything together. And it's exciting and it's cool. But it does mean people have to reach out, do a bit of nagging, do whatever's necessary, bribery works, to get that information captured. And it's quite a bit. So we want site information, clinical impressions, so both sow and downstream, historical information, genetics, biosecurity, suspected route of infection, and then the big one that I think is really cool is your follow-up dates, and done I don't know how many PRRS eliminations, but keeping track of when one wants to initiate something is always a challenge if you're just carrying it around in your head. And this allows us to go, oh yeah, this farm should be now sampling processing fluids. This farm should be doing XYZ next step. And it's going to give us, I think, tremendous value in keeping farms on track and tidying up elimination efforts particularly. So the outbreak report is also an initiative of giving more information to our clients. And we're trying to do that across the board. So the lab expansions and investment in what we can do in-house, for example, is to take the mystery out of lab reports. And any of our outreach to producers is to try and take the mystery out of PRRS reports, to try and take the mystery out of influenza information. Some of you in this room have gotten some of these outbreak reports. They're still a little vetty, like we have to speak the language, but so far the feedback has been really good. We've been getting lots of positive feedback from producers going, really like the information, it's very helpful. So we're generating that for sow sites only. And as you know with PRRS, the minute you try and extrapolate to every pig site, it becomes immediately unmanageable. Sow herd breaks automatically, all of its downstream sites are going to get that virus. And so we're really, really, really focused on sow sites. We've got the general information from the survey. We're looking at RFLP, which is still just a name. So you guys have heard lots of PRRS presentations trying to explain RFLP versus sequence versus whole genomic sequence, etc. And for a lot of it, it's still just a name. So we talk about 111, 184, that is really just giving that virus some kind of a name. Timelines with integrated steps, and then specific SOPs for that farm. So this would be a generic example of some of the information we try and capture on an outbreak report. So it's really a bit of a genetic discussion of the virus itself over here. It gives some tombstone information on the farm. And then across the bottom, you can see our clinical impressions, historic information, and some biosecurity stuff. The other thing we'll do in most of these outbreak cases is do a geographical circle of various diameters, identifying all the sites within proximity. And that's important for maybe your decisions of what you're going to do next with an outbreak, and also for trying to manage and understand a bit of area risk. So we've got lots of data, and we're getting more and more and more. I'm not going to go into great detail because I was sure Robert was going to go way over time. So it was one of those, I'm going to have to really hurry up and get this done. But fine work, Robert. You were bang on. What I have found with PRRS virus is there seems to be TSN turning points over the years. So if we look back to the time of mystery swine disease, 2004, 2005 was a huge TS turning point for our industry. And that was the introduction of some highly virulent strains that we had never dealt with before. Just nasty things. And predominantly A-specific strain, which was originally called the 1 undifferentiated 4 and later got labeled the 118-4. Then in 2009, another incursion of some very, very frisky strains that actually swept through big chunks of the industry. So 122.2 was the strain of 2009. Started in Lambton County in one little area and just went over a short period of time. And that strain is interesting because it changed quickly. And in to our favor, often reduced virulence from some of the original outbreaks of that strain. And then the next one was 2017. And we all have indigestion from this still. Like Greg Weidman used to have a full head of hair in 2017. And this trend line is why he currently does not. It's just been super frustrating. Higher incidence of outbreaks, certainly more differential strains, strains that didn't read the textbook. And we still have a seasonal pattern, but we're also seeing isolations typically where we wouldn't expect PRRS to be a problem in warm summer months. This one's interesting. So shorter period of time, but if we look at prevalence by RFLP, the changes in our isolation pattern for me are quite dramatic. And again, they're influenced by a number of factors. One of them is breaks in genetic herds. And it's so high impact. When we have a multiplication system break, no matter how robustly you're testing, this virus can beat you. And then inevitably, you're going to have more downstream herd contamination. So some of this pattern is associated with that. Some of this is just certain strains gaining more and more predominance within the industry. And it's also our industry, how it's set up. So proximity and denseness of pigs, as Robert said, hugely important. So if we get a new strain that is highly transmissible in a very pig-dense area, then of course it's going to result in massive amounts of change within that area, regardless of the farm's current status. So this is interesting, because this goes to, what are we kind of doing now? And so 55% of our outbreaks in sow herds are still entering into elimination. 7% are depuping. 7% don't know what the hell to do. And 30% are choosing to live with the strain that's resident in their farm. I don't know who this 7% is, but so sow site elimination strategies. Again, interesting. So what I said earlier, getting used to being wrong. At one point in time, I thought I had this elimination stuff down to a recipe. And the recipe was a timeline. And if you wanted virtually 100% success, you could do a gap elimination. And I've done north of 60,000 cells worth of gap eliminations. And for a long time, I could stand up in an audience like this and go, don't worry, that's going to work. Wrong. We now have strains where I would not do a gap elimination anymore because of the unpredictability of that strain and when we're going to be able to eliminate it. The timeline concept is just no longer a thing. So what are some of the approaches? Well, we still have 30% that rely primarily on serum inoculation. That's interesting because that's kind of based on homologous immunity is the best. But at this point in time, it's a big question mark on risk reward because there's lots of science to say MLV use or a combination of MLV use in your productive inventory and serum in your open inventory of your gilts has a much less impact, much faster resumption of time to baseline production, but slower to time to negative. So they're all part of what we do with consideration. So we have 32% that are doing MLV and serum. We have 19 that have decided to use PrimePack as a different vaccination program into the sow herd. That's an interesting product. Just quick history lesson. Early days in the 90s, it came on the market and was actually used quite a little bit in both Canada and the United States, but its company that made it ended up being a patent infringement, and so it got pulled off the market. So it's been back on the market for not too many years now, and we are seeing more folks look at that vaccine. I personally don't know if there's any efficacy differences. The only thing I can say that I feel about PrimePack is there is science showing it's a shorter shedding time. And that may hold some water in GDU use, where we're focusing our vaccination program specifically on replacement gilts, not vaccinating in the main sow herd. So we've got 19% that are doing some kind of feedback exposure at this point, 5% natural exposure, and then another, kind of tail ender group down here that don't know what they're doing. So sow site remain positive strategies. What are we doing in this situation? Because I would have been very dogmatic at times in my career and say, no, sow herd should ever stay positive. Wrong. There are certainly situations where it makes far more sense to stay positive than it does to undertake a very complicated elimination strategy. So in most of those, 60%, they're utilizing vaccine, commercial vaccine, MLV. 15% a combo. I need a little more clarity on exactly what that 15% means in a remaining positive strategy, because what Robert mentioned, I personally, as a practitioner, believe is absolutely true. That pesky virus changes often the minute you put it through a pig. And we used to, once upon a time, think long-term serum exposure would be the answer for great acclimatization of replacement gilts. And I would say, again, wrong, wrong. What you tend to do is screw yourself. So the virus mutates, and then you reinfect your main sow herd with a changed virus. So I am absolutely not an advocate of long-term serum use. Going back to MLV and serum inoculation, I've become a big advocate of trying to maintain my parity structure with short-term targeted serum use. And then eliminating based on triggers, not timeline. I don't have a big enough N to say I'm right, but I'm an eternal optimist. So someday I hope I can stand up here and go, well, by jumping, I was right. And then we're 25% who don't know what they're doing, staying positive. So we've talked a bit about this already. What has changed about PRRS? And again, more virulent strains. Over the years, I've done a fair bit of consulting in the Midwest, in Iowa and Missouri, and I saw strains down there that I thought I would never see anything like anywhere else. And we've had some that are getting close. And it's scary. I mean, walking into a large 2,500 sow where there's not a live baby pig, there are strains that'll do that. More modified live vaccine use in growing pigs. Once upon a time, I would have been, let's minimize our commercial vaccine use in Ontario. Wrong. Nope, let's not do that. So if we're in a pig dense area, I've become a huge advocate of the cost benefit of vaccinating against PRRS. It's not for every farm, not for every flow. But it's almost undisputable that it's a cost benefit. Robert presented some evidence that there can be exception strains. Well, yes, of course there can, because it's PRRS. So, a bit of a philosophical shift. We can and should eliminate PRRS from all sites, as I said before. 2, one size doesn't fit all. Consider the factors of your specific situation. And the witch picture is, I like to refer to strains as a witch, because most of them are kind of witchy. So should we eliminate? Well, this is, I believe my sister called this a mind map as a slide. Thank you, Laurie. And it's all the areas of consideration when a farm breaks with PRRS. And I think Clint did a great job last year at a big buck day, so some of this information would be secondhand if you attended that. But one of the big ones for me is, are you in a buy-sell relationship? And I would go so far as to say in almost every situation, if you're a farrow to wean producer and break with PRRS and you're selling your pigs to someone, you better figure out how to eliminate it. It compromises buy-sells again and again and again. You need to think about how long is it going to take? How severe? And we've got some slides coming up to show you some outbreaks are really like only we sneeze. What are the odds of remaining negative? Farm design and layout. And we do need a consideration of impact on staff. So here's what I'm saying about buy-sell agreements. It's becoming very common to have some discount reflecting a PRRS outbreak in buy-sell agreements. This is a very recent example of a US contract that got sent to me. And it's pretty frisky. So initial positive through week 12, 15% discount on base pig price. Week 13 to 20, 10% discount on base pig price. Week 21 until pigs test PRRS negative for 4 consecutive weeks, 5% discount on base pig price. The implication is if they don't meet that, it's 5% as long as the buy-sell remains. So it's significant, and it has to be. It's significant for the sow farm. It sucks. These strains can be hugely significant for the wean finished person as well. Suck. And very, very, very expensive. And there's no way around that. The ones that I see more commonly here in Ontario would be a mortality check. So within a buy-sell contract, a sow herd breaks with PRRS, anything above baseline mortality in the nursery for the buyer is 0 value. And that's quite common. There can be a delay on assessing that impact. So pigs are bought, buyer pays 75% of the value of what was delivered, and then it's reassessed again to meet whatever your mortality change was. Those situations don't make for good long-term buy-sells. They're tense, they're frustrating. You can have producers that were friends become enemies. I really strongly encourage anyone who's got a sow herd and selling a wean pig, if they break with PRRS, eliminate that virus however you possibly can. So again, it's a multitude of decisions. We need to think about different things. And there's still is a far better approach to getting rid of it than living with it. But I've come off of my pedestal. There are situations where, nah, you're better off. Absolutely. So here's an example of what we're trying to do with some of the data. And this would be a farm where you might decide to live with it. So this is in weeks on the bottom. And these are some basic production parameters. And this was a PRRS 111. And when you look at the actual impact and timeline, not that bad. And these would be the 4 parameters we're really using to try and assess impact on sow herds. So pigs wean, so we've got pre-wean mortality and abortion rates. And the list gets bigger, but we want to keep it simple as we try and correlate data. And that's all I got.
Marty, could you just clarify one thing? The bad US 144 lineage 1C virus that we've been hearing so much about, has that one shown up in Ontario yet? Can you just speak to that?
Absolutely not to my knowledge, yep. So as of today, as far as I know, that remains fully American. It doesn't have dual citizenship. But that's an interesting virus because there are farms that went out 365 days into an elimination and failed with that virus. And it's a shining example. The 174 that Robert put up as a reference strain in one of the research projects was another very predominant US strain. Same thing. Extended timelines on elimination. We're doing a lot more, processing fluid monitoring would be our first step as we're moving through an outbreak. So you have your plan, your intervention, and then you're gonna go, like for me, I do a whole parity turn at least, and then I'll start processing fluids. We've tried the tongue thing. I still like processing fluids better. It seems to be easier to collect and more reliable. But now we're waiting to see with those processing fluids when they turn negative, because they tell us when mom's not birthing a viremic pig anymore. And we have situations where they're going out to 200 days past outbreak, which we used to dogmatically say anyone can eliminate in 200 days. Well, we're still birthing viremic pigs in 200 days. And the question mark is, could that be environmental contamination and just sloppiness? And I don't believe so. I truly believe that these farms with certain strains have a prolonged time period of birthing viremic pigs. So until we get those negatives, we're not pulling a McRebel trigger or next stage intervention. Then we get them, and then it's a full court press to kick the dang thing out. And that's why the concept of, strategically bringing in chunks of gilts 4 months from breeding and serum exposing them through that time period will maintain a much better parity structure and reduces the overall economic impact, if you can do it. Not every farm can.
Thanks, Marty. You'd said there are some strains of PRRS that you would say, no, we can't do an elimination. It would be a depop on that. What percentage of the strains would you say no, that's going to be too problematic? And does that apply the same regardless of farm size?
Yeah, Mark, I wish I could give you a real simple answer to that one. But you're not allowed to ask a question again. No, what percentage? It would be a low percentage. I still think that, elimination intervention, I would trump that with a few caveats. So right now that 144 in the US, there are a number of very seasoned practitioners that just pull the plug when sow herds under their care or under their ownership break with that. So it seems to have taken on a bit of a life of its own with increased decision to depop. But it's a highly virulent strain situation that would, like light that one up for me. And or ones that drag out. So, here in Ontario, our 184, certain groups in that family, because there's lots of different strains with that RFLP, time to negative pig production is taking too long. So if we can get better at saying, yeah, you break with this, and our genetic analysis would say it's in the bad category, and our early days of losses would verify that's in the bad category, I'd be more tempted to say to a farm, just end the agony and depop. But it has to be those two things. We don't have genetic analysis yet that gives us confidence to say this is this strain for sure. Because as Robert said, slight differences can change it. But when you can take the data we're trying to recover, have the genetic similarities, check a box, have the early impact on sow mortality and abortion rates and stillborns, and check a box. Have your pre-wean mortality, check a box. Depop, like get her done. And that's where I feel this is powerful. We have to bring in more information with higher levels of confidence so we can say that. The other one is market forces. So there would be time periods where even if you don't have PRRS, you probably should depop because you're going to lose your shirt for a while. And so if we factor those in to a PRRS outbreak, absolutely, we should be more aggressive. If you're coming into a period of time that's going to coincide with very, very low markets and money-losing situation, that factors into.
I have one, Marty. I was wondering if in Ontario, you guys are talking or considering the possibility to eventually eliminate the virus from Ontario.
Not anymore, my friend. I believe a wise man once told me, we should eliminate mycoplasma, not PRRS. It would be easier. And you may be correct. No, at this point in time, a provincial approach to elimination, I don't know if we have any force in our industry that would champion that. We're all pretty cynical. Now, having said that, pockets, areas, more of a Swiss cheese approach, absolutely makes all kinds of sense. But provincially, not going to happen, certainly in my practice career.
Anyone else?
Cool. Thank you very much, everyone.